Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my standard review of the new Canon RF 100mm F2.8L Macro IS USM. So if you don't speak all of the Canon language there, this is a lens that is designed for RF, which is their full frame mirrorless mount. It has IS, or their image stabilizer. It has a USM, in this case a dual nano USM focus motor, and it also has, it is from their L or luxury, their premium series of lenses. Now if you want more information and a deeper dive on the various aspects of this lens, I recommend that you check out my definitive review, or you can check out my text review on my website as well. Today I'm going to hit the highlights for you, and this lens is a highly anticipated one for me. I have owned the EF 100mm F2.8L Macro IS since it came out, and it has stayed in my kit longer than any other lens. So I have a lot of experience, over a decade with the lens, and so I was keen to see a native mount RF lens, and so Canon has brought that. And as they typically do, they have packaged a couple of upgrades as a part of the RF version. One of those I love, and that is it now, instead of it being a 1:1 macro or having 1 times life-size magnification, it is 1.4 times. So you can focus about 4 centimeters closer to about 26 centimeters, and it focus breathes less. Byproduct, it gives you a higher magnification, as you can see here. It also gives you even better close-up performance relative to the EF version, and so that is a great addition that I'm really excited about. The second addition I'm not nearly as excited about, and that is that there is a third ring that has been added to this lens that they call SA control, which stands for spherical aberration. And you can bias it in 4 degrees either direction towards plus or minus. And essentially what it does is it does just a little bit of a shift that allows you to get a different look to both the rendering, autofocus rendering, but also the rendering on the subject itself. To me, this is, in all the applications that I've tested, is more of a gimmick. And so it does change the nature of the bokeh quality, as you can see here. If you go towards the plus side, it gives you a more outlined kind of bubble bokeh, as they sometimes call it, and try to give you a more defocused look if you go towards the minus side, particularly in the foreground. But you do so, particularly at the extremes, at the cost of sharpness on your subject, and you end up with this kind of soft focus 80s type look that frankly I'm not all that partial to. And when I did these portraits with my daughter and I showed her those results, you should have seen her face wrinkle up in disgust at that look. And so there may be a few artistic applications for a few people, but for most people I suspect that this is going to be something that they never want to touch again. And at first I was a little concerned because there is a little bit of a detent in the center, that 0 position where there's none of that effect, but it doesn't hold very well. And so I had a little bit of shifts to where I'm losing sharpness, having this kind of halation effect on some of the highlights. But I realized that there is a lock that looks a lot like a zoom lock. Of course, this isn't a zoom lens. And what it does is it locks at the 0 position in that SA control. And I suspect for many people, they'll lock it into place at the 0 position and probably never unlock it. One thing I don't like, however, is that's the first ring that you come to. And so you do tend to kind of encounter it when you're not looking first and you want to focus there. The focus ring is actually the middle ring. So that ergonomic aspect I don't love. Pretty much everything else about the ergonomics I do like here. The lens has grown. It's certainly longer. It's now 148 millimeters in length, which by the way is just about as long as the Tamron 70 to 180 millimeter f2.8 zoom for Sony. And so it's a fairly large lens. The diameter hasn't really grown here. It is 81.5 millimeters in diameter. The old one was about 78 millimeters. You retain the same 67 millimeter front filter thread. And the weight has also grown. It's up to 730 grams versus 625 grams before, so about 100 grams of additional weight. But of course you are getting a higher degree of magnification, a few new aspects of lens design there. You also get a very thoroughly sealed design that has a thick gasket at the rear lens mount. It has flooring coatings on front and back elements and about 12 different internal seal points. It's a professional grade build. It feels feels tough and durable. And I can speak with experience as to my other L series lenses that I have owned, that they have held up very, very well over the years. And the matte-like finish on this lens seems like it's going to be durable, resistant to scratching and fingerprints as well. I will also note in terms of the size, like in my case, I'm using the EF lens via the adapter because I'm using it on mirrorless. And once you put the adapter in, you've basically gained all that additional length. And so it kind of works out to being the same size. And interestingly enough, when you have the lens hoods attached, with the lens hood, the new lens is actually a bit shorter than what the old one due to the difference in that lens hood dimension. So as noted, this lens features dual nano USM focus motors. I'm actually filming on it at the moment, so you have an idea of how it's doing in tracking my face and a little bit of look at the footage from the lens. So there's a lot to love here and a little to not love about it. Overall, they've given this lots of torque, and so even though it's a macro lens with a lot of focus potential, it focuses nice and snappy at basically all the tested places. I don't feel like I really needed the focus limiter in terms of focus speed, though there are applications where you want to limit going into any kind of focus throw. And so a good job on that front. I found for shooting portraits that IAF worked great, very, very high accuracy, very well focused in results. I also found that for video purposes that focus pulls were nice and smooth and quiet, which by the way is a huge upgrade over the EF version. The old USM motor on that was not great for video, really. The other thing I found is that although I look pretty rough, I was on the way to the construction site. We're doing a whole new facility for the church that I pastor. So I was looking a little bit rough. However, you can see that Focus did a good job of tracking my face. And as I approached the camera, did a good job with eye detect there. So as far as all of those results, I was happy with it. I was happy with focus accuracy in the field. So my two criticisms is one, and this is kind of a common Canon mirrorless criticism, and that is that with this lens and with others, I find that sometimes it's reluctant to focus at a closer object. So in the case of this leaf, I was trying to get it focused there. It just didn't want to do it. And so I had to, try either to focus on a high contrast subject nearby, like the ground, for example, or to manually focus to get into the right zone, and then autofocus would lock on as you see here. It's a little bit of an annoyance, and it happened a number of times out in the field. And so for my type of photography, which you're probably familiar with at this point, that's a limiting principle there. A bigger deal, however, is the fact that there is some focus shift from about 5.6 through 5.8 or so, f8. And so what happens in that zone is that, for example, in this shot of Loki at f5.6, eye detect did its job, but you'll see that there's a back focus, and that's due to that focus shift. I noticed it also when testing on my test chart, and other reviewers have noted that as well. It's an unfortunate thing. The good news is that if I'm shooting at infinity for landscapes, I didn't notice it there. Or if I'm shooting macro and I'm manually focusing, there's no problem with focus shift in that kind of instance. And I was able to get good results for my macro work. But, a few things there that I'm less than crazy about. And by the way, manual focus emulation works well enough for macro work that I frankly just stopped thinking about it within a few seconds, and that's really the highest praise that I can get. It just got the job done for me, and I was able to get accurately focused macro results, even with that really tiny depth of field that you're going to have at that 1.4 times macro magnification. As far as the image quality goes, basically they've taken an excellent already lens and they have improved it further. The only negative I saw in reference to the EF lens is that it has a little bit poorer light transmission, I think, and that's due to having a few extra elements here, 17 elements in 13 groups instead of 15 elements in 12 groups. So I think we've lost a tiny bit of light transmission, but we've gained all kinds of stuff. Both lenses are very sharp in the center of the frame, but the RF lens is noticeably better at both the mid-frame and down into the extreme corner. So it's more consistent across the frame, which gives you more options, even if you're wanting to reproduce pages or artwork or something like that. The flatter the plane of focus, the better, obviously. It has a tiny, tiny amount of pincushion distortion, so little as to be basically negligible, and surprising for an RF lens where almost all of them seem to have pretty high vignette. This actually has fairly low vignette. It only took a plus 42 to correct for in my manual correction, and obviously the correction profile will take care of that all, no problem. Chromatic aberrations, lateral ones towards the edges of the frame, well controlled. There is a bit of longitudinal chromatic aberration, but I only really noticed it in the most demanding of circumstances. And overall, I found very good contrast and very good results as I use the lens. And so that sharpness is great on the subject, great contrast, great color, which is kind of a Canon strength. And beyond that, I found that the bokeh quality I thought was very pleasing in most all situations. There's this one portrait shot where I thought that the foreground bokeh was a little bit, jaggy edged, but overall the bokeh quality looks nice and good. You stop down to about f4 and you start to get more even circular shapes all across the frame. So very nice optical results. So at the end of the day, this is a lot of lens and it performs at a very high level. Unfortunately, the price, as we've come to expect with RF lenses, has drifted up relative to the EF version, which was launched at a price point of around $1,000 US. This lens comes in at $1,400 US, though oddly enough, the EF version has drifted up from about $900 where it was about 18 months ago to where right now it's retailing for about $1,300 US. So I don't know what that's all about, but the bottom line is that you're paying a little bit of a premium for this lens, though it does come with some additional features, and at least one of those I suspect will be useful to you. So if you've been waiting for the premium macro lens to come for your new RF mount camera, this is probably the one to get. It is vastly better in terms of autofocus and overall build relative to the 85mm f2, and of course that is only a 1:2 macro lens, so this gives you almost 3 times as much magnification, and so that's going to be extremely useful. So if you've got the money to spend, this is the lens to get. It's going to be great for wedding photographers. It doubles as a great portrait lens, and of course it does a fantastic job as a macro lens. So if you can live with the focus shift, a little bit bigger size and weight and price tag, then this is a lens that's probably going to make you very happy. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you look in the description down below, you can find linkage to that full text review I referenced, an image gallery, buying links if you want to purchase one. Check out Craig and I's new channel, Let the Light In TV, and subscribe over there. There's also linkage there to follow myself or Craig on social media, to become a patron, and of course if you haven't already and subscribed right here, then please do so and ring that bell so you get notifications when new content drops. Thanks for watching. Have a great day, and let the light in.